May it be your will, God, my God, and the God of my ancestors, that you guide my eyes with the light of your Torah and save me from stumbling and making mistakes. For God gives wisdom, and from God's mouth comes knowledge and understanding. Amen.
Amen. Parasha Vayetzei. So we are next week's Parasha Vayetzei. We will again try to look at some Midrashim, and before that let's look at the summary quickly. Would somebody like to volunteer to read it?
First Aliyah, Yaakov is fleeing to Haran. On his way, he stops for the night. He falls asleep and has a dream in which he sees angels ascending and descending on a ladder. God appears to Yaakov and repeats the blessing given to Abraham and Isaac. God promises to protect Yaakov and return him home in Canaan. Yaakov promises that he will worship God. Second Aliyah, he arrives in Haran and meets his cousin Rachel at the community well and is welcomed by his uncle Laban. Yaakov falls in love with her and asks her hand in marriage, saying that he'll work for Laban for 7 years as bridal price and then marry her. Laban agrees. Third Aliyah, however, after 7 years of labor, Laban tricks Yaakov, and on the wedding night, Leah, his older daughter, is substituted for Rachel. After the ceremony, Yaakov discovers the trick and becomes angry. Laban then offers Rachel to Yaakov if he worked for another 7 years. Yaakov agrees. Leah gives birth to Reuben, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. Rachel remains childless and gives Bilhah, her handmaid, to Yaakov, gives birth to Dan and Naphtali. Leah gives her maid Zilpah to Yaakov, and she gives birth to Gad and Asher. Fourth Aliyah, Leah further gives birth to Issachar and Zebulun and a daughter Dinah. Rachel finally gives birth to Joseph. Yaakov approaches Laban and asks him to allow him to return to his home in Canaan, but Laban negotiates a salary for continued service. Yaakov chooses as his wage the newborn animals distinguished by the different colors that are part of Laban's herd of goats and sheep. Fifth Aliyah, in spite of Laban trying to trick him, Yaakov is blessed with a fortune in sheep and cattle. After a further 6 years of working for Laban, he recognizes that Laban and his household were jealous of him, and on receiving a prophecy from God, he decides with Rachel and Leah to flee from Laban. Sixth Aliyah, while Laban is out of his house, his entire household flees. Rachel steals her father's idols, and Laban follows them, but is warned by God that he can't take revenge for the theft. He questions Yaakov, who, while confronting Laban for his years of duplicity, promises him that whoever stole the idols would not stay alive. The idols were not found, and Yaakov and Laban make a peace pact. Seventh Aliyah, Yaakov and Laban separate, and Yaakov arrives at the border of Canaan and encounters angels.
Thank you very much, Rahel.
Thank you.
So if you all will remember some of our ideas that we discussed last year, we discussed the ladder of Jacob. We discussed the connection with the encountering of angels at the end. I strongly suggest all those who are new or all those who have forgotten some of the ideas, please go back to the video. It is posted by Jeremiah, Parasha Vayetzei, and during the week take a look at it also. I believe it was one of very insightful classes that we had studied together. Okay, so today I'm going to introduce a few Midrashim and just try to open your yourself to the ideas how the rabbis are connecting the dots and what the Midrash wants to do. So this Midrash is Rabbi Samuel bar Nachman opened his homiletic exposition with the following words. And the verse is, everybody knows the verse, Shir la malot Saina el harim, Saina el horim. So, the word horim means parents, and or harim means mountains. So he makes a connection with Shir Hamalot Saina el Harim, and from there he takes a jump into our parasha. So let's see what he has to do, how he does it. Rabbi Shmuel ben Bar Nachman opened his homiletic exposition with the following verses. A song for ascents, I lift my eyes to the mountain. This is Shir Hamalot Saina el Harim. Read the verse. I lift my eyes to my horim. Instead of harim, horim. I lift my eyes to my parents who taught me and guided me. From where will my help come? Jacob said at the time that Eliezer came to bring Rivka as a wife for my father, what is said of him? Then the servants took 10 of his master's camels, and I don't even have a single earring or bracelet. Rabbi Hanina said, God sent him with an entire troop of angels. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, God sent them with him, but when he stood before Esav, God took them away. Jacob retorted, am I one to lose my trust in my Creator? God forbid that I should lose my trust in my Creator. Rather, my help comes from the Lord. That is again the same Psalm, second verse. So Shir Malot Saina el Harim, Me'ain Yabo Ezri. So he fills in the blanks, Shir Malot Saina el Hahorim, and from the Horim he takes a detour into what is happening in Yaakov's life, and then comes back that my help comes from the Lord. Me'ain Yabo Ezri. Ezri Me'im Adonai, Usse Shamayim Vadis, right? He will not let your foot give way, your garden will not slumber. See the garden of Israel, neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Lord will guard you from all harm, from Esav and from Laban. He will guard your soul from the angel of death. The Lord will guard you, your going and coming. And Jacob went out from Beersheba. Now, whoever looks at a midrash like this, he says, King David wrote this psalm, most probably, because King David also collected a lot of other psalms that were around. There are psalms in the Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, from Adam, from Moshe, and a lot of other psalms from Korah, Bene Korah, sons of Korah. Maybe this psalm was written by Yaakov. Who knows? This Rabbi Shmuel ben Nachman says that no, this is direct relationship. The way the psalm is written, it is talking about Yaacov Avinu's tryst with Esav and his challenge over there that does he trust God to keep him alive and keep his family alive, because he was just about to be, Esav is returning or meeting him with 400 men all on horseback, right? So maybe it could be a war. So his mindset is one where he is very troubled, and that's when the psalm makes sense. Now, to give such a connect with the psalm, for the reader, it becomes a total, what we would call, in cricket language, you get bold. It's a googly. What is the connection? Why is he connecting it with something like this harim and horim? Just one word that he gets a point to say that I lift my eyes to the mountains, and from there, he says the mountains is really a hint to horim, and I look at what guides me about my parents. And then he thinks about how when in his father's life, Rivka was brought back by Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, how Eliezer went there as a rich man and gave her all this jewelry, because of which it was easier to bring her back. And now I am a pauper. I am without any a single earring or a bracelet, right? So what I would like you to really do is, even between Midrashim, there are connects. And I would like to share with you another Midrash, which is also on the same lines, which may be able to reveal to us what is the connectivity. I mean, you see the connect. Yes, I have to trust God even in my worst case scenario, right? That for sure is the final take of the Midrash. But still, how does the rabbi look at it? Why is this particular psalm? Because a lot of psalms are talking about it. Why? Because this psalm is about hell and where it comes from. So it is very apt. But still, we would like to go a little deeper. Let us look at the proof text, the text that from our parasha where the psalm is hinting at, right? Or where the psalm is coming through. Jacob resumed. That should be a resumed. Okay. Genesis 29. Jacob resumed his journey and came to the land of Easterners. I don't know, some mistakes have crept in. Now this is resumed after he had the vision or the dream of the ladder, and he promises to give a tenth, if you all will remember. And then he opens his eyes and he sees that he has a dream of Hashem and angels on the ladder. He says, if Hashem will be with me and will be my God, then I will give back a tenth and will bring me back alive, right? So after that, Jacob resumed his journey and came to the land of the Easterners. There, before his eyes, was a well in the open. 3 flocks of sheep were lying there beside it, for the flocks were watered from the well. The stone on the mount of the well was large. These flocks were lying beside it because the flocks came to drink water over there. Were watered means were normally watered from that well, but they are still waiting for the water. The stone on the mount of the well was large, but there was a stone. It was locked or sealed. When all the flocks were gathered there, the stone would be rolled from the mouth of the well, and the sheep watered. Then the stone would be put back in its place on the mouth of the well. So that was what they practiced when everybody was there from the village, all the shepherds obviously. Then and only then would they roll back the stone and water everybody. So nobody can I don't know, claim that somebody stole from the well or whatever. Jacob said to them, my friends, where are you from? And they said, we are from Haran. So they are still not in Haran. They are in the field. They are outside Haran. And he said to them, do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? They said, yes, we do. He continued, is he well? They answered, yes, he is. And there is his daughter coming with the flock. So perfect timing. He is talking about Laban, and Laban's daughter Rachel is just about to enter the scene. He said, it is still broad daylight, too early to round up the animals, water the flock and take them to pasture. It's still early. They can still feed a little bit more. Why are you still waiting over here? take them to the fields. Give them water and take them to the fields. But they said, we cannot until all the flocks are rounded up. Then the stone is rolled off the mouth of the well and we water the sheep. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's flock, for she was a shepherdess. And when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of his uncle Laban, and the flock of his uncle Laban, Jacob went up and rolled the stone of the mouth of the well and watered the flock of his uncle Laban. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and broke into tears. וישק יעקב לרחל ויישא את קולו ויפרח. This is the proof text on which that Midrash and other Midrashim that we are going to talk about are going to. This is where he thinks about, I came here as a pauper without any earrings or any jewelry for my bride to be, and one of the reasons is that he cries. So Vaishak, he kisses Rachel and he raises his voice and cries. That is what is the wording of the Torah. Vaisa et kolo vayefach. So this is the Midrash coming from Rabbi Eliezer. Why did he weep? He said, at the time that Eliezer brought Rivka, what is written about it? The servant took 10 camels, etc. But I didn't take a single nose ring or a single bracelet. You see, this Midrash is repeating the same idea which is there in the other Midrash, Vishir Lamalot. So one idea is, but I did not take a single nose ring nor a single bracelet, and that's why he weeps, because he feels very, what do you say, sad about the fact that he comes empty-handed. Another explanation, why did he weep? As he saw that he would not be buried with him. She would not be buried with him. Now that is, totally off. Where does this idea even creeps in that she will not be buried with him? And it's so far-fetched that they are just meeting for the first time, right? And he has this whole vision, or at least he is a premonition sort of, that she would not be buried with him, which means that he also recognizes that she will be his wife. He also recognizes that he marries her. He also recognizes that she would not be buried with him finally. Where is this coming from? Right? That is what, when we are reading a Midrash, we are like totally stumped. How does the rabbi connect these ideas? Why would Yaacov Avinu, just first meeting with Rachel, would even have a premonition about her death? Right? Very weird. Now, to look at it as two different ideas, we think that they are different ideas, yeah, but they are coming from the same source. He is crying, and that the cause for crying could be either he is not going to be buried, or that he is poor and he will not be able to give her the gifts. Two very different ideas. Which one is true? If one is true, the other one is probably not true. And if it is not true, then why is it Torah? Torah is a myth. How do we need to reconcile this? So, is it just explanations that come out of our head? Like, let's talk about what could cause it? Yeah, it could be this. It could be brainstorming, right? Is it brainstorming that the rabbis are doing? And then it is passed on for generations. Rabbi Eliezer, what weird ideas he had when he was brainstorming. So the fact is, there is another Midrash. I was searching for this Midrash, but I could not find find it in the books I have here. And I didn't have time today to research it on the web. But there is another fantastical Midrash. And that Midrash is connected with this Midrash. The Midrash is Yaacov Avinu, obviously when he left with permission from his father. He left, no doubt he left to save his skin from Esau, but Esau was not pursuing him, right? Esau said that I will kill you only after my dad passes away, right? When I will be mourning for my dad, that's when I'm going to kill you. The same day I mourn for him, I'll kill you. So there was no rush, sort of, for Yaakov to run away without any camels or whatever. Then last year, if you will remember, I had said that there is an episode where after the dream of the ladder, Yaakov, he sets up the stone and anoints the stone with oil. Where does he get the oil from in the desert? Outside. He was not in an inhabited place, right? So he had camels and he had oil and he had food with him and everything he had, probably, right? I mean, it makes sense. He will have, because his mother took permission from her husband that let us send this son so that he will marry my brother's daughters. Correct? So when he left, he is supposed to have left with all what he is thinking about. So what happened? When he reaches Haran, why is it that he is a pauper? So the Midrash fills in. Midrash says, Esau, when he heard that Yaacov Avinu had fled, he sent his son Eliphaz behind him to kill him. Father instructed, the son has to do his duty. So he comes to kill him and overtakes him and he says, my dad asked me to kill you. Yaacov Avinu. But he is very difficult for him because he has played on Yaakov's lap. That's what the Midrash says. It's very difficult for Eliphaz to kill Yaakov. So he is in a dilemma. What can I do? So Yaacov Avinu tells him, you know what? You go back and take all the 10 camels that are with me and all the jewelry that is with me and everything with me and make me a pauper. A pauper, a poor person, is like a dead person. Poor person is like a dead person. So you can then lie to your father that you killed me. Because technically you killed me. Right? This is what the Midrash is saying. And that is what Eliphaz does. Eliphaz goes back, taking all his money and leaves him alone. And now he is by himself without any, without any possessions or whatever. And he reaches empty-handed. And that's why he's saying that I cannot gift anything. Now, once we add this Midrash into bring it on the table, right? We've added to the soup. Now we see that these two Midrashim will again be connected. Why? Because in this Midrash, poverty and death are connected. And in the earlier Midrash, poverty is equated with death. So poverty is equated with death. Not only that, there are some very difficult things like Yaacov Avinu. What was Yaakov's problem in life? That he was called Yaakov. Yaakov is because he came holding on to the heel of Esau. But heel is crooked. That is the part of our body which is crooked, right? That is why when he cheats or takes the baracha from Ishaq, let us, for a minute, let me see if I can get this off the screen. So we were discussing this idea that poverty and death are related, right? This is an idea that comes through the Midrash, and in this, by not directly but indirectly, he is weeping because he has a premonition about her death, that she will not be buried with him, and that he will be, and that he comes as a pauper. Now, I would like you all to think about these two ideas. We all know the story of Yaakov, right? Yaakov goes to Haran. Haran tells his uncle that he wants to marry Rachel. He fell in love with her. He says, okay, what is the bridal price? 7 years. 7 years of working for me, and you can have Rachel. After 7 years, he gets cheated, and Leah is given to him. In the morning, he sees that it's not Rachel, it's Leah after the wedding night, the nuptial night. He goes back to his uncle. He says, we don't do what you do at your end. The older, younger is not, cannot go before the older, right? He says, but I will give you Rachel also. Work for another 7 years. So next week he marries Rachel, works for another 7 years. Now, why does he get cheated? The reason he gets cheated is because he could not pay the bridal price and pick up the daughter he wanted and go back home, right? So because he gave all his money to Eliphaz, according to the Midrash, what causes that, the effect of that is that he has to be in a situation where he is sort of insecure. He can be used, and he was used by Laban, not once but twice. He does get married to these two sisters, but the price is very high. So that he convinces Eliphaz to take his money works against him, right? So he has to work all his life. Finally, another 7 years he works, and after 21 years, the angel comes and says, "Okay, move out. Enough of staying with Laban." And then he decides to sort of run away. So his position is so bad that he cannot even openly say bye to his father-in-law. All because of which? So because of the fact that he was a pauper, right? Now think about it. Even in his life, the fact that because he was poor and he worked for his bride, but his father-in-law cheated him. The minute he cheated him, what happened? What caused the strife between the sisters? The older had children, the younger did not. Rachel did not have children. All of the time there was strife in his family. She was childless. It is as if he had a family but full of strife. There was never shalom in his house. So again, where there is such a situation, he really didn't have, he had her as a wife, but he really didn't have the relation that he should have had with her. You see, once she comes and says, "Why don't you pray for me on my behalf?" And Yaakov says, "Am I in God's stead?" Although he has his predecessors, you have Abraham Avinu pleading to God, "Let us have children. Let me have children." And that's why he makes a mistake. And Sarah thinks that he only prayed for himself, not for her. But he asks for children. Am I going to die? And is Eliezer going to inherit everything? That's what he says, right? We studied. So Abraham intervenes. Yitzchak, he pleaded instead of his wife, for his wife's sake, to have children. So he married at 40, and at 60, she got pregnant. For 20 years they were waiting for children. But he prayed. He did not marry a second woman. No such things. He said, I want children and I want it from my wife, Rivka. Yaacov Avinu, when he knows that this is how his parents have acted, thank you. When he knows his parents have acted like this, he says, am I in God's stead? And again, there is another Midrash, which says that, Yaakov, don't you know when somebody is in pain, how you are going to, how you need to respond? Her kids, all your children, because Yaakov at that point already had children from Leah. So all your children are going to bow down to her child. And that's why Yosef sort of becomes the wazir in Egypt, so that all his children bow down to her. I mean, that is also his child, but because Yaakov Avinu was not sensitive enough. Midrash makes another connect over there. Okay. Everybody with me till here? So the Midrash, although is very, simple, the two things. We think, oh, two things are because he was poor and because he was but the Midrash is talking about some very deep things that have happened, because obviously the rabbi has read the whole Torah when he is bringing up the Midrash, right? So he is saying, after studying this, we understand that this is what it is. Yaakov, not only in that in her death, Rachel was estranged from him, but even in his life, she was estranged from him. Even in his life, he really could not be close to her because of the challenges that they had. The challenges happened because of what? Because of the fact that he gave away all his money to Eliphaz. Anyway, so here is another idea where the rabbis come from. Okay, Rabbi Hanina said, anyone who says that God just lets things slide, let him forfeit his own insides. That means let him die. Instead, he delays his anger, but will eventually collect what is rightfully his. For it was a single scream that Jacob caused Esau to let out, as it is written, when Esau heard his father's words, he let out a great and a bitter cry. And when did Jacob pay for that? Centuries later in Shushan, the capital city, as it says, and Mordechai let out a great and bitter cry. Now another Midrash over here. Linking over centuries. The great and bitter cry that Esau cried after he heard that Yaakov had cheated him was paid back to Am Israel, the descendants of Yaakov, by Haman, who decided to eliminate every Jew on the planet. Okay. For all those who we know Haman's lineage, who was Haman? Haman ben Hamedata Agagi. Yeah. From the family of Agag. Who was Agag? Agag was the king that King Saul had a war with, and Shmuel Hanavi killed him from the people of Amalek. Yes, everybody knows what I'm talking about? Please raise your hand at least. Okay. So Amalek. We know Amalek later also, that we have a mitzvah to eliminate Amalek in the Torah. That mitzvah was to be done once we establish a monarchy. The first monarch, the first king of the Jewish people was supposed to eliminate the people of Amalek. And that was somebody the king who was given the task was Saul. Saul did do the war, but he let Amalek alive. Again, the Midrash says that because he was a king, he had to give him a maid servant. So he has to give, although he was in a prison, but he had to give him a maid servant. So the maid servant gets pregnant that night, and the next morning Samuel comes and finishes Amalek and says, why is he alive? And finishes him. Samuel himself kills Amalek. Man of God, prophet. But when he sees that Amalek was alive, he just draws his sword, Saul's sword, King Saul's sword, and kills Amalek. But nobody knows that that lady becomes pregnant who was with him that night. And from the descendants of that child, you have Haman. Okay? Is it clear? Now coming back, who was Amalek? Amalek was the son of Eliphaz. Eliphaz the son of Esau. Esau's grandson was Amalek. So again, this Midrash is connecting two different dots, saying, you know what? Esau screamed a scream because of the actions of Yaacov Avinu. That scream, the cost of that scream was Yaakov's life. Sort of. That's what the Midrash is saying. The life was supposed to be taken by, now we know from what we have been discussing, that life was supposed to be taken by Eliphaz. But Yaacov Avinu convinced Eliphaz to take his money instead and became a pauper and paid the price by not having a proper relationship with his wives, by not having a proper family, a peaceful family, by having all the incidences in his life, even the sale of Joseph later is because of this strife between the brothers. All the cause of that is because he could not have a bridal price and pick up his wife with money, right? So that Eliphaz let him go, but his son Amalek was somehow spiritually motivated to finish the task his father didn't do, and it continues generation after generation after generation till it reached a pinnacle where? In Purim story, right? Haman decides to do it when he is in a position to do it. So you see, when we are talking about Midrashim, they are not so superficial that he only cried because he thought that his wife is not going to be buried. There is so much more deep connect with all these ideas that we need to unpack them, unravel them, and understand. So let us read this proof text. We go back into Genesis 27. No sooner had Jacob left the presence of his father Isaac after taking the beracha, after Ishaq had finished blessing Jacob, then his brother Esau comes back from his hunt. He too prepared a dish and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, let my father sit up and eat of his son's game, so that you may give me your innermost blessing. His father Isaac said to him, who are you? And he said, I am your son Esau, your firstborn. Ishaq was seized with a violent trembling. Who was it then? He demanded. That hunted game and brought it to me. Moreover, I ate of it before you came and I blessed him. Now he must remain blessed. Esau heard his father's voice. He burst into a wild and a bitter sobbing. How does it say in Hebrew? Vayetzei. And he said to his father, bless me too, father. It says in Hebrew, Kishmoa Esau et divrei aviv ויצעק צעקה גדולה ומרה, and he screamed a loud scream. He burst. That is not translated correctly in the English here. ויצעק צעקה גדולה is, and he screamed a loud scream ומרה עד מאוד. ועד מאוד, ויאמר לאביו ברכני גם אני אבי. So he burst into a scream. The scream means, I mean, it is a painful scream. So that's why the translation says bitter sobbing. But it is צעקה גדולה ומרה. ויאמר בא אחיך במרמה ויקח ברכתך. He says, your brother came with guile and took away your blessing. We came to the words צעקה גדולה ומרה. So in this particular 27:35 is, bless me to father, but he answered, your brother came with guile and took away your blessing. Esau said, was he then named Yaakov that he might supplant me these 2 times? First he took away my birthright, and now he takes away my blessing. And he answered, he added, have you not reserved a blessing for me? Isaac answered, saying to Esau, but I have made him master over you. I have given him all his brothers for servants and sustained him with grain and wine. And then can I still do what then can I still do for you, my son? And Esau said to his father, have you but one blessing, father? Bless me too, father. And Esau wept aloud. And his father Isaac answered him, saying, see, your abode shall enjoy the fat of the earth and the dew of the heavens above. Yet by your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restive, you shall break his yoke from your neck. So, over here, and Esau wept aloud. The translation of what are the words? Isa Esau kolo vayepch. Isa et kolo, and he raised his voice and he cried. So there are 2 lines, two sentences over here that the Midrash really is taking its hint from. The first Midrash, the first idea that we were speaking about earlier, Yaakov, when he sees Rachel, he kisses her, and when he raises his voice and wept. The same phraseology is originally over here, that he raises his voice and wept. That particular phrase, he raises his voice and wept, is something where you are totally hopeless. Early next morning, Abraham took some bread and skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He placed them over his shoulder. Early next morning, Abraham took some bread and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He placed them over her shoulder together with the child and sent her away. And she wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water was gone from the skin, she left the child under one of the bushes and went and sat down at a distance, a bow shot away, for she thought, let me not look at the child lies. And sitting thus far, she burst, crying. The word crying is missing. Okay. So again, Vatisa et kola vayepch, and she raised her voice and she cried. Here again, you see that when Hagar was hopeless, she didn't know how to save her child, right? She gives up the child, puts it under one of the bushes and goes and sits crying and screaming. That is when this kind of crying happens. She raises her voice and she cries. So we have Hagar crying like that. We have Esau crying like that. But we have Yaakov crying like that. What on earth is Yaakov going to lose when he cries like this? Because when he meets Rachel, that is the same phraseology that is used. That is the hint that the rabbis get. There is something wrong with his crying. Yes, he met her. Yes, he kissed her. Why does he cry? And why does the Torah mention it to us in the language that he lost something and he's hopelessly lost it. Okay. So from other textual hints, we see that Vatisa et kolah vayetzei is the jumping board, the point of departure for the Midrash. The Midrash takes the hint from here and says Yaakov lost something terribly. So Yaakov had a prophetic vision of him losing Rachel. Okay, or him losing his standing, sort of, because of his poverty. He lost his bearing. Either way, that is why Yaacov Avinu cries. But the hint is in the language. Okay. The second connection that I would like you to pay attention to is, okay, in this there is another such phrase that is again a point of departure for the rabbis, and here it is. When Esau heard his father's words, in second last line, he burst into wild and bitter sobbing. But the Hebrew is Veitzak se'aka gedola umara. Now there is only one other place the Torah uses very similar language, but a little different, and that is in the book of Esther. When Haman issues the verdict, the edict for all the Jews to be finished, all the Jews to be killed, right? That's when Mordechai gives out a tzaka like this. And Vaitzak Mordechai tzaka gedola umara. And Mordechai screamed a very bitter scream and cried. The Chachamim over here, when they say in the last Midrash that we were talking about, that the repayment of Yaakov Avinu's scream that he caused Esav to cry was, at the point where Haman decided to annihilate the Jewish people. Why? Because that old Saka Gedula Umara was then coming back to Am Israel. That's when the representatives of Jewish people, Mordechai, screamed that scream. Okay. So again, the connecting points that the Midrash use mostly is what is called as Gezerah Shama. There is a phraseology that repeats itself. So you will let us till here try to understand what I have been building. Right? You have Yaakov Avinu. He goes at the well, meets his bride to be, falls in love with her madly, gives her a kiss, and cries a cry which is a hopeless, sad cry. He would be tears of joy meeting his cousin. It should be tears of joy meeting his soulmate or whatever. But no, this cry is a very sad cry. So what is this sad cry? He had a prophetic vision. The prophetic vision was about the fact that he will never be able to be with her in his life, because he didn't have the money to buy her with the bridal price, be with her in her death, because whatever is going to cause her to be estranged from him. The same idea, what is in Yaakov Avinu, the effect? What was the effect of that? He is running away from his father. He's running away from his brother. He paid whatever money he had in his hand to Eliphaz to save his life. But that particular decision was a very difficult one, because everything that comes after that is very costly for him. So whatever happens, the ball sets rolling, he becomes a pauper, he works for 7 years, he gets cheated. Because he gets cheated, his wives are at loggerheads with each other, jealous about each other. Their children continue that jealousy. Then Yosef gets, from Yaakov Avinu's perspective, gets killed, but he is sold into slavery till the very end, where they reconcile. Yaakov Avinu, that's why they descended into Egypt, And because they descended into Egypt, we had the whole episode of 210 years of slavery. So what caused it? Yaacov Avinu's blunder. Similarly, the other Midrash is building the whole idea of the repayment of that scream comes when he wants to take vengeance, when Haman wants to annihilate the people. So Esau decides that he wants to do it, but it remains in their psyche, the whole nation's psyche, and not the whole nation's maybe, but at least in Amalek's psyche, till Amalek is annihilated totally. Now, I hope I have another idea, which is sort of a positive idea. On some grounds, when Esther is approached by Mordecai, and she is asked, go to the king, she hesitates. She says, the king has not given me a call. I cannot go there without his permission, So he says, don't you think that because you are in that position, that you are the queen, that this is not going to come to you? He says, if you don't act now, then you and your father's house are all going to be eliminated. But Revach v'Hatzala, and the word Revach Hatzala is help or deliverance. Revach, help and deliverance will come from some other place, but you and your father's house will be finished. So Mordecai knew something, that he was confident that they will never get finished. And he understands that Esther needs to act, but where does he know that Revach v'Hatzala will come to Am Yisrael, right? So the Hachamim, when they are connecting the dots, again see these two words, they are nowhere in the Torah except for one place where you will see these two words in the same episode, not together with each other, but there is one episode over here which says, when Yaacov Avinu is coming back, he goes out of his way to send messengers to Esau in Seir. Esau is not staying with Yitzchak, that he needs to meet him. He could have directly gone to his father, but no, he wanted to clarify something, clear something, make peace with his brother. So he sends messengers. And that is the episode that I'm going to read from. I'm not going to, maybe I quickly try again if this comes up. Then Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Yitzchak, O Lord, who said to me, return to your native land and I will deal bountifully with you. I am unworthy of all the kindness that you have so steadfastly shown your servant. With my staff alone I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. This is the Midrash that the other point of the Midrash was connecting. The first Midrash we saw with Shir Lamalot is talking about this episode, right? So I am unworthy of all the kindness that you have so steadfastly shown your servant. With my staff alone I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become into two camps. Deliver me, I pray. And the word is Hatzilenina miyadachi. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, else I fear he may come and strike me down. Mothers and sons alike. Yet you have said, I will deal bountifully with you and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which are too numerous to count. After spending the night there, he selected from what was at hand these presents for his brother Esau: she-goats and 20 he-goats. It was 200 she-goats and 20 he-goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, milk camels and their 30 milk camels and their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 she-asses and 10 he-asses. Then he put in charge of his servant, drove by drove, and he told the servants, go on ahead and keep a distance between the droves. And the Hebrew is Vaiten beyad avadav eder levado ויאמר אל עבדיו, עברו לפניי, ורווח תשימו בין עדר ובין עדר. in this story, the two words, Hatsileni and Revach. Revach veHatzalah, right? That Mordechai talks about are in a different form. Hatsileni is deliver me, and Revach is when he acts to appease his brother, he is sending these gifts and he is putting Revach over here is distance, but Revach also means help, right? Between the rows. We have discussed the whole idea of these gifts was to return back the blessing that Yaacov Avinu had cheated Esau of. We have discussed in last class. Please refer that class. I believe maybe Toldot last year's Toldot we had discussed this, right? So Mordechai, when he is mentioning these two things to Esther, he is hinting to the fact, Yaacov Avinu made a mistake. He made a blunder. But Yaacov Avinu, he repaired the problem. Yaacov Avinu returned the blessing to Esau. So if Esau's descendants have a problem in their head, they are not going to get through it. Because he was the one who did the Hatzilenina and he was the one who did the Revach. When he returned the gifts to Yaakov, to Esau, that's why I know for sure that punishment won't be due to him. He did what was necessary to repair the problem. Correct? That's where the first Midrash talks about from your parents or from whatever you learn. So it is Mordechai now who is learning from Yaakov Avinu's action and understanding that, yes, no doubt that Hashem will, what is the word? He will take his due of the scream that and the crying that Esau had to undergo. Esau had to go through the pain of, but he cannot finish Yaakov because Yaakov finally gave him back the blessing. So that's why Mordechai can say that Revach veHatzalah. These are the two words, are the hint words in this parasha. When a midrash is being made and connected, that is what the sofer, the darshan, is doing. He is recognizing these key points to understand what are the message between the words, message between the lines, the information that is being sent to us through these stories to tell us how history, all these stories of all the patriarchs, we say that the acts of our forefathers are a sign for the descendants. What does it mean? That this is how, whatever their acts were, there are consequences, but because they were giants, there are also positive consequences. There are positive merits that we reap from what they have done in their lifetimes. So that's why the ups and downs in the history of the Jewish people. And if we will live by the messages of those positive consequences, that they were able to rectify the world, rectify themselves, then we will be able to also do what it needs to be to rectify the world and move in the direction that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. So these are the ideas that the Midrashim want you to recognize. So the Midrash is really using very simple language, but very deep ideas, how they are connecting these dots with the Gezara Shava, the words that are keywords in different parashiot to build the Midrash. Okay? So hope this was a little not very well arranged class. Sorry about, because I came in a little late and I was too hurried to make this happen. Sorry about that, but I hope the point is understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a fantastic week. Shavua Tov Mevorach.
Shavua Tov Mevorach. You also have a fantastic week, Rabbi.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you all for joining.